So this is living with Schizoid-Schizotypal personality disorder. I wanted to make this essentially just because I thought it'd be interesting to try and actually talk about my condition or the conditions. And I would preface everything by saying, like, I don't see psychiatrists or psychologists anymore simply for the fact that, like, you can get diagnosed with 1,000 things, and likewise 1,000 people can be diagnosed with the same thing, depending on like what kind of day they're having, who the psychiatrist or psychologist is. Like, I'm sure we all hit certain points where we can fit into certain diagnoses upon many things. And I've been for a while. I'd received, like, throughout my childhood, so many diagnoses by different medical professionals that said so many different things, like such as this: there's potential for autism, there's obviously like depression and anxiety, but that's not necessarily like a personality disorder. And when I first got the schizotypal with potential schizoid traits, it was just kind of another one of the things I read it and I was just like, that's not really me at all. Like, the schizoid part, absolutely, for at the time. The schizotypal thing was never really anything that I took seriously. It just kind of seemed like it was a misdiagnosis. But like, looking back on it now, I do definitely see it, and I think to myself, like, you know, whoever actually diagnosed that, very astute work. Not that I necessarily agree with it, but I do think I would absolutely see how, particularly for how little I would actually open up to psychiatrists and other people, how they managed to get that diagnosis. And I would myself probably think that would be accurate to say. And so the way that I'm planning to do this video was, I've made notes, but I've not done it in the way that I usually do, in which I write like the notes I want to hit in the order I want to hit them, to try and give it a consistent flow, and to actually give a timeline of whatever it is that I'm talking about. This is just whether I hit these notes or not, completely different matter. And I also did want to be able to have some form of free and open discussion with myself, just because I do think that's, but I know that I need to keep myself focused in a sense, because like I can spend hours and hours and hours and hours thinking in my head, talking to myself in my head about like my condition or things that happened in life, and like things are a lot easier to do in my head, because the second that I am taking things from above and trying to then project them vocally, because even doing it like this, there is like a sense of, because like my physical body is involved, like things just change, they immediately change. There's two different things. Just because I know that this relates to something I was going to say later, but I suppose I am doing this free form. So it was like when I was a child, I was what you would call a very sensitive child. Like, I literally have cried over spilt milk, because it was the last bit of milk. I'd had it and then I spilt it, and I was just like, oh great, now nobody else can have any milk. And I just felt really bad over it. But at the same point, like, I didn't like talking to any of the kids. I didn't like want to be around any of the kids. I always put that down to I had really bad eczema when I was a child. Like, you see pictures of me and it looks like it's something contagious. Like, I would have it from like the back of my ears, just all these scabs, bloody scabs, looping round to the side of my mouth on both sides of my face. Like, it was awful. There's no way you'd let your child come and play with me as a child, because you just think like, oh, this kid's infectious with something. But that was okay for me. And I guess as a child, you don't, particularly when you're so young, you don't really need other children to play with you, because you make your own entertainment, like, with yourself. I mean, that's what I believe. I'm certain there is something where we all need social interaction. I know certain children are just like hardwired to not need that, I don't know whether it was like nature or nurture, but I do know, or I do think at least, obviously I can't say I remember the entirety of my life. I do think that even if it was both, and I already didn't necessarily need to talk to people or to be around other kids, because I could just make my own amusement, that was then further reinforced by the fact that, you know, I wouldn't really get the chance to talk to other kids, I guess, because I presume when I was very little, again, their parents obviously thought that I was like infected with something nasty. I will just say as well, so for the schizoid part of things, like one of the very first instances, or sorry, one of the very first conditionals of the condition is that you simply can't express yourself to people. Like your mind, in my case my mind, just won't allow it. Like I can have it all straight up here and it's like perfectly worded in an instant, but I think that's because that's like a safe part in my head where it knows that it can have that kind of just off the cuff, honest conversation with itself. But then the second that the physical body actually gets involved, it just changes on the way out, because there is some subconscious thing that knows that anything that isn't up here, or particularly anything that is being brought down from here to be projected, essentially becomes something for the world, and the world and other people, and the world and other people aren't necessarily something that you want subconsciously. So your body, your mind kind of just starts changing the way that things work internally. So again, when I was a kid, I really didn't, like, I just wasn't bothered about talking to other people. I wasn't bothered about having friends. That wasn't anything that was really important to me. Not that I necessarily disliked other people or anything, but it just wasn't really something that was on my radar. It just wasn't. There was no emotional investment, I guess, and there wasn't for a very, very long time, like including into my teenage years. There's a very intense emotional world inside, but externally, like, all of that was, I suppose, kept away by myself. Again, I'm certain it was an absolutely a defense thing, simply for the fact that you don't, I don't know, internal things, like, very precious to me, like particularly how I feel, like particularly the few things that I can feel for other people, and the few things that I have felt for other people. Like, one note that I have written here is that love broke through, and that was absolutely true. Like, the first person that I ever fell in love with in my life, I consider that the first person I ever actually felt any real emotion toward in my life, and that changed the course of everything. Because I guess it was like all the bullshit that we all have in our own heads and in our own hearts. Like, love is something that just, you can't, it throws it all away, and it just shows how insignificant all the other things are, and it changes everything. So FYI, I'm relighting this cigarette like 10 odd times because it was the very last of my baccy, so there's next to no tobacco in it, so it's going to go out very quickly. So yeah, in my youth, I obviously wasn't really concerned about talking to other children, but naturally, the more you grow up, other children want to talk to you. They want to get involved with you in a sense, I guess. And in my own personal analysis of my own life, it's been that the schizoids was very much prominent in my early years, and for quite a few years. But then the more and more, because I know the way that other people have gone through life, and let's say they get bullied or they have like social anxiety and everything, like those kind of external emotions break them, like they change them into something else, like they become like an anxious mess. I was about to say nebbish and then mess at the same time. Mesh. And I always had that wherewithal, where because I suppose my internal life was so precious and meant so much more to me, whereas the outside world, more importantly, people, meant very little to me, and not in a disrespectful way. It was much more of a valid thing for me to do, much more reasonable for me to simply reinforce my own internal world, as opposed to allowing other people to invade my internal world. And I think that is where the schizotypal part came through, which is the personality, which I've said in a past video very much feels cultivated in by myself, in the sense that I know for me to have like my big opinions on my personality, again, it's I would draw from the internal part of me that had very much been the larger part of my life, like where most of the people, like 90%, 99% to do with other people, how they interact, what their friends think, what their peers think. Mine was the complete opposite way, but I understood that it was going to be difficult, but it also had to be done, that something was created, I guess is the word to use, that would allow me to sustain an existence in the outside world, with other people wanting to talk to you, with other people wanting to be around you. And so I took the best parts of myself, of the internal world, and kind of shaped them into something for the outside world to have, which I used to describe as I could just like hold like a body up, the flesh up of what you would consider me. And then I know like some people in the past have been like best friends, when they've kind of like gotten annoyed with me, or things have just gotten cut a bit too far, I know it's really hurt them, it's really surprised them as well. I've just so easily been able to drop the person that they thought they knew, drop the flesh, and just like, okay, if we're done, I'm done, and then just absolutely walk away from it, where they would be expecting somebody to want to like fight, or like fight for the friendship, fight for the relationship, whatever it is. But that's just not how it was for me. So the schizoid youth transitioning into a schizotypal adult, very much a defense and survival thing, in the sense that it had to be done, and it was either, even as a young child, it was either like you let the world break you, you let these people invade you and turn you into what they would have you turn into, even if they didn't mean to, or they had no idea what they wanted to turn you into. In my thing, it was either, you let them win, or you fight back, essentially. But obviously I didn't want to fight, but you had to find a way to manage, and thus the schizotypal thing kind of formed out of the schizoid thing. And I do believe it's probably safe to say, more so in my adult life now, that because I was essentially so good at doing that, and it worked so well, that the schizotypal part did kind of take over, in the sense that I did, and I do now, I know this for a fact, I do essentially live more for the benefit of other people, like to try and help people. And that's not me trying to, if I could start my own band, celebrating myself. It's just, I don't know, I suppose I did have the luxury of having the choice of like, well, if this thing, this outside personality means so little to me, again, so what do I want to do with it? And thus I chose, again, just with what few talents I do have in this life, the English language and human psychology, I did think it would be best just to try and help people. Because I can't say people were all that nice to me when I was young. Not that everyone was like bad, not that everyone was nice either. Like, all kids get bullied, in my opinion, like even if it's just a tiny, even the bullies will technically get bullied by somebody. I suppose it depends on what your definition of bullying really is. I just found it a lot easier to, I suppose, in manner that I couldn't help myself because I wasn't invested or truly alive in the outside world. It was a lot easier for me to help other people in the boat that they were in, which would be existing in the outside world with other people, where like those things do matter to them. They want to survive, they want to be a part of that world, whereas I'm very much just here for the time that I'm here, and everything else is just internal, external, in a far greater way than what we could say is on this plane of existence. School was a bit of a fucking shit house for me. I know the way it was, even through like personal, like family matters and with friends. Sometimes it can go from, as I've said in the past, I had to see psychiatrists when I was like really young, and like not a single one of them could find out what was wrong with me. Just because A, I couldn't really communicate myself to them, so sometimes you'd like almost tell them what they wanted to hear, and B, it's just how are you supposed to be able to have somebody else get a good impression of you when you yourself can't even express your true self to them? And it was a bad thing to be seeing psychiatrists when I was young. Obviously not that it was bad at all, but you know, it was a weird thing. It wasn't where it is today, where it's like very socially acceptable. What a lot of people do want to see, and I'm sure any of you who've tried to go through the psychiatric system in the NHS know, it is like months and months and months long of a wait just to see anybody now, because everybody has some issue that they want to see a psychiatrist about. I suppose you could liken it to old people going to GPs, where it's like, and you know, God bless them, but it's like I suppose perhaps because they don't have anybody that cares or they can communicate with, or they'll do the thing where just you know, they'll go to the doctor because they broke a fingernail and so maybe it's cancer, or like if they're at the shop and there's a massive line behind you, they'll want to have like that 10-15 minute long chat with the cashier, but they don't understand it's like other people have lives that they really need to move on with, and they can't really be doing with waiting around that much time for somebody who not that they won't necessarily need it, but there can be greater issues at hand, which is another reason why I opt not to see psychiatrists, simply for the fact that I can manage like my own shit in my own head. I've managed it my entire life. Like, I don't need to take up somebody else's spot. And there could be somebody who, even if they could be like statistically in less need than myself, in my mind it's just like, hey, if you feel you need it, go take it. Like, you take my place. I can deal with stuff myself. Which is the reason that I tend to refuse medication. You'll see me necking this because the fucking co-op, me and my mate put an order in when we were at our house yesterday. I asked for sterilised milk because I need it to be, while I'm in a tent, I need it to last 3 days without being in a fridge. They fucking changed it for fresh milk. Dicks. Fuck, I've lost my train of thought here. This is why I do the note thing, because I can just, again, my brain will just switch like a mile a minute. So I don't take medication. I mean, I did used to for like quite a long time, but again, just having to be my own hero, I guess, my own rock. I basically came to the conclusion and said to myself that if the only way that I can live what I perceive to be a comfortable life is by taking medication, that's just not a life that's worth living for me. Like, I need to find a way to be able to make it through like each day. Not that each day is horrible. Like, I mean, you'd think me living in a tent now is horrible. I know for so many people it would be, and it's not nice. But I mean, like, I wish you could see the view. I would show you, but then it'd take me ages to get the camera set up again properly. Because I don't have the bag to lay it on anymore. It's a whole thing. The production values are pretty shit. And I know that thing about the medication, a lot of other people, and you could say, it's dangerous to necessarily say that to somebody and have them do that. But I know countless other people that, because of myself telling them that and really reinforcing what it's like, they themselves have weaned themselves off their medication, or in some cases the medication that they choose for themselves, drugs, and it's worked. Like, they feel much better. They may still have problems, but they understand that it's not just giving somebody the answer to something. It's kind of being the unknown hand in the shadows that guides them, gives them the tools, so when they finally manage to make a change or do something for themselves, it's all the more reinforced mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because they have done it themselves, and it has a much longer lasting impression because of that. And yeah, I don't really like things that fuck with my mind like that, because it needs to be like a sharpened blade in a sense. Like, it needs to be that way. Again, all the shit that I'm having to do with Cheshire Constabulary, I know most people would have just rolled over, exposed their soft underbelly, and just let corrupt authority do what they wanted to, in hopes that it would just be over soon. But it's like, that's not what it's like for me. Like, I've dealt with what you would say corrupt authority. Like, one of the things I put here was just to say how people treated me. So in like my late years in high school, I ended up getting what was known as a revised timetable. Like, my psychiatrists came into school and like had a big sit down and talk with my teachers, and they sorted it out. So I basically just got to like drop half the subjects, because again, it was just having to be around people all the time, every single fucking day. Like, it ruined me, and it warped me so much, particularly as a child. But as I got better at handling it, it still was an issue when I was a teenager. There are a lot of things I could say about in my youth. Like, that's like probably another video for another time, part 2, just because that's probably a scarier thing to talk about, not for me, but just to kind of see how warped a child can get by the influence of the outside world, by the invasion of the outside world. But for now, I'll just stick to what I was planning to. So I got a revised timetable, which was funny, because then the school just kind of threw their hands up, and any kid that then started seeing psychiatrists or had, like, a little bit of trouble, they started handing out these cards where I had a little man like running toward a fire escape, and it said in the thing, because of issues, if I present this card to you, I'm allowed to miss one lesson per day. So that was how they just kind of like flatlined any of the potential issues any of the kids had. I was the only one who was allowed to have a revised timetable. And to be honest, toward the end of high school, I ended up skipping the rest of the lessons anyway, just because I couldn't fucking deal with it, and I was really kind of coming into my own sense of not authority, but just I was just done with that whole institution, to be honest with you. Like, it meant nothing for me. I didn't learn next to anything in school. Obviously I did, and there are things I wouldn't recognize that I specifically learned, but the majority of things that I know in life are things that I've taken my time to actually study, get myself involved in personally. And to give you an idea of like how strange things can essentially get with troubled children, if you will, was we had to sit, like, for one of our GCSEs in the last year of high school, we were sitting one of the things for maths, I believe it was. And this one teacher, I'd never had an issue with him. He'd never had an issue with me as far as I was aware, but because my teachers had to have this like big talk, and they'd obviously been saying, like, right, if Nathan looks like he's having any troubles, do this or do that. Again, I don't actually know what was said. This guy, we were sitting on GCSEs, but this one, we were just allowed to sit in the classroom, but it was still going to be equivalent to like a third of the overall marking that we would receive. It was like, right, okay, everyone, when you're doing tests, you do this, you do that, and then make sure like you put your name and your sign up on the front, and then turned to me and went, oh, unless that's going to be too hard for you, Nathan. And I just kind of like looked up at him, like so taken aback by it, because I so wasn't expecting somebody who, as I say, you're told throughout your entire childhood, like, okay, respect the teachers, respect the parents, respect the Paluche, respect this, respect that, and if you ever have a problem, you take it to them. But the reality is, the majority of them, they just don't give a fuck. Like, they're the same as every other human being, where for the most part, if there's a problem, doesn't matter who it's for, if it doesn't directly involve them, it's just not a problem, really, is it? And it's especially not anything that they have to take with any kind of seriousness or compassion or empathy. And yeah, it was the way that he had said this, and with such the tone that he used, like the entirety of the class turned to him and just kind of gave him like a ooh, like looking over at me, like even he knew he'd gone too far. And I just remember him like keeping his eyes locked on me after he'd said it, because I know he could not turn to look to face anybody else in that classroom, because he felt the emotion that he just caused in that classroom. And this is one of the things that just absolutely shattered like the illusion that was presented to me that authority was anything that needs to be respected just because you're told it needs to be respected and just because they're given the title doesn't mean that they are in fact valid to be holding any such thing. And yeah, I sat in that lesson, I just fucking like silently wept to myself, because I refused to do the test, but of course that only came back as on me, and you know, I had a third of my mark for my GCSEs in maths just completely nulled, because I didn't even do the test. But I didn't have the balls to stand up and just say, you know what, sir, swivel on this, mate, and walk out of that classroom. I mean, I absolutely could have gotten him fired for what he'd done and what he'd said. And I mean, if it still happened today, you could absolutely get him fired for doing such a thing. But I couldn't defy his authority, so I had to do the next best thing, which was just, I suppose, making my point known that I didn't like what had happened to me by refusing to do the test, but I couldn't stand up and argue back to him. And I never told the teacher, never told the psychiatrist about that. And I really fucking should have done. Of course, I really fucking should have done. From what I hear, he didn't actually stay at the school that long afterward anyway. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you can kind of tell just like the look in his eyes all the time. Like, he had issues of his own, like probably a marriage trouble or something. I really can't remember, but I know he had his own shit going on in life. And it wasn't fair to take it out on the child, but as it is, like, you can get sympathy if you're a child and you need help, because it's, oh, you know, you poor thing, but once it gets to a certain place, particularly if you aren't somebody who opens up about what's wrong with you, it just kind of becomes more of a nuisance to other people, more of a burden. But I never liked telling other people like what was going on with me. I tried to always keep it to myself, but I guess just because it had an impact, and because I would still have to be out there with other people, but then I would just be dealing with myself, my own thing. Everybody just wants to get involved, and it's like, I don't want you involved. Like, that's not how I do things in life. And again, this is I've never like tried to be somebody who defines myself by a condition, only for the fact that, again, it's like, who's to say I even agree with the condition that's been laid upon me, if you will. And again, not that I ever like I dislike people that do this, but anybody who, like, one of the first things that they'll try and tell you is like, you know, oh, I've got this, I've got that, and this is wrong with me, and this happened to me in life. It's just kind of like, I don't know, it's like as if that's all they have to say. And this is what I mean. I know there was like a period in time, particularly when like the emo phase came about, where it's like everybody had bipolar or dissociative identity disorder, and everybody had to be, it's kind of like the transgender thing now as well, or the sexuality thing now. It's like the first person is like, oh, I know I'm born a man, but you know, I feel like a woman, therefore I want to be a woman, and you have to address me as a woman. And because they kind of get so much attention from that, and I'm not saying it's not like a bigger mental issue than that, but because they kind of get so much attention from that, there's always going to be somebody else who's like, oh, well, I'll tell you what, I'm pansexual. I don't even have a gender or a sexuality. And then, you know, all the attention turns onto them. And then there's somebody else who's like, oh, damn, they're getting a lot. Oh, okay, well, I'm demisexual. I'm gray sexual. I'm an alien. I'm a fucking stop sign. And it goes on and on and on. It's just, it gets more and more ridiculous. And just to clarify my point on the whole transgender thing, my heart genuinely goes out to you, like, if you feel like you were born in the wrong body. However, if there is any doctor out there who instead looks at that, and instead of saying to you, okay, well, to be honest with you, you can't deny the science, we should probably put you into some psychotherapy just to get you to be able to accept, comprehend, and make a great life of who you are born as, what you are born as. If instead a doctor turns around to you and goes, yeah, okay, let's cut your dick off, that sounds good, that sounds great, that doctor needs to have their medical license revoked, as far as I'm concerned. Like, that is, I'm so certain that must go against the Hippocratic oath that they have to take. The same thing as if somebody goes in and just, oh, I know I have all my limbs, but I feel like I shouldn't have any arms or legs and I should be blind. Instead of a doctor saying, well, that's not who you are, let's work on getting you to accept that you are a fully able human being. Any doctor that says, right, I'll go get my fucking hacksaw, we'll sort you out in a second, that's a bad doctor. That's a bad fucking doctor. Again, some form of corrupt authority. Yeah, again, I'm sure there's going to be 1,000 things I'd wish I put in this video, and I'm on like my last note, effectively. So I probably will end up making a part 2 to this, because I'm going to have to see how I feel about what I've said in this video first. So I'll just go straight to the note. I put down, because I've thought about this like for a long time ago, and I do think it's a great way to put myself forward. When I was a young child, like the first job I ever wanted was to be a policeman, funnily enough. But again, that kind of went out the window, because like I was bullied. I think I just liked the idea of, especially because like I used to love playing video games, and like, you know, the heroes were, they couldn't be broken in a sense, because they were literally hard coded to be that. Like, they were people you could trust. Not that I trusted them and thought they were people, but you understand what I mean. Like, there was something to aspire to. Like, they would never back down no matter the odds. And I think just like being bullied and not necessarily liking the way that I was treated by most of the people in the world. Yeah, I think I just like the idea of being somebody who could stand up for other people that were in my position. You know, the little people in life, the people who deserve to actually have good things happen to them, and people protecting them if they couldn't protect themselves. But the majority of the world is like, they would rather, I know the way I've put it in the past is I've had people, sorry, fucking mosquito, I've had people that have like brought the entire weight of their lives on me. And I will say this, I've had so many friends throughout the years who have been to see psychiatrists, and their psychiatrists have discharged them under the premise of, oh, well, if you ever have a problem, you just go talk to your friend Nathan. And it's just like, oh, fucking thanks. You're throwing your entire workload on me, but you're the one receiving the paycheck for this. Because apparently I do get talked about a lot more than you'd think somebody would in a lot of different people's psychiatrist sessions, to the point where like they'll come back and say, oh, I told the psychiatrist this, and he'd say like, how you explained it to me. And the psychiatrist always does a thing where they just silently agree with me and say, yeah, okay, no, actually, no, I get that. Because it can sometimes be a much deeper knowledge of the person than the psychiatrist will have access to. Which, I mean, of course it is, because, you know, as a friend, you're going to see somebody in many more different situations, and for a lot longer than just like an hour-long session a week or a month. And then you'd also occasionally have the asshole psychiatrist that would absolutely agree with everything I was saying and my analysis of things, but then just tack on one final thing at the end, just so in their head they've still done their work. And it's just like, if you're not, just don't try and don't involve yourself in my game, right? Just this is what I excel at. Fair enough, you went to college, you went to university, but that's not to say that you're actually competent at anything that you fucking do. Because again, one thing you should always ask yourself, and this is why psychiatrists I know also really like me. The most recent one I saw wasn't of my own choosing. I was asking for some particular medication, and for some reason, it wasn't like even like a psychoactive medication. It was just like for physical health. And my doctor was insisting that I didn't need it, and was like, right, well, I think you should go see a psychiatrist to talk about this. And I was like, I promise you, like, it's nothing to do with the psychiatrist. And but I basically, just because this doctor three times in a row, and we've had a conversation about different things, she's always ended every single one of them having to go, oh, okay, no, I guess you're right. And it's like, doctor, like, one of the things was, again, I'll try and just make this brief, is I got a vaccination for hepatitis A and B at once, and like about 15-20 minutes after I got the vaccine, I started getting a headache, and I described it as, it felt like something blossomed in like my brain, stem at the back of my head, and I started getting a pain in the front right cortex. After a week, moved to the back right. After a week, moved to the back left. After another week, moved to the front left. That lasted for a week, and then it went away. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I've had like one of the, not the worst reactions, but when they say, oh, you know, some reactions can last for like 2 months, I was like, oh great, I just happened to have that one, but okay, it's over now. The pain went away for 2 weeks, and then it came right back where it left off, and after a week it moved to the back left one again. And so I went to see my doctor about it, and I explained it to her, and even though it happened 15-20 minutes after I'd received these vaccines, I don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily anti-vaxxer. Like, I love science, which I'd so love to do a science in the Bible thing, as in combine them both, because you'd be fucking amazed. I was fucking amazed, blew my fucking mind. And this doctor, a medical professional, said to me, oh no, that's impossible. It can't be to do with the vaccine. It has to be something else. Vaccines can't do that. And I said to her, like, doctor, you can't say that. In the very inserts, the very leaflets that come with these vaccines, it even says all of these things could happen. It literally states exactly what happened to me can happen as a side effect of this vaccine. And then she has to concede with just the, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And it's just like, how many other fucking people is this woman giving terrible, inaccurate medical advice to? So anyway, she sent me to, for something else, she sent me to this psychiatrist to talk to. And that was with the stipulation that, right, okay, well, if you give me the medication now, and I say I'll go see the psychiatrist, we'll have a handshake where you're right, and then I'm technically right, I guess, as well, whatever you want to consider it. And we did that, and the psychiatrist ended up seeing, because, like, I was explaining to her about my condition. I was like, I promise you, I'm not going to be able to, like, open up to you properly, at least until I know some things about you. Like, I need to know why you're doing this, because I always have the thought of, it must, somebody to be like a politician or a psychiatrist, you either have to have said to yourself, asked yourself the question of, like, right, why am I so competent? Am I truly capable of taking apart people's lives, like the most hurtful, fragile parts of people's lives, exposing it all, and then piecing it back together in a way that is helpful to them, in a manner that is beneficial to the patient? And there are one of two answers for that. Either they have asked themselves that question, or, yeah, you know what, actually, no, I am good enough to do that. I'm well competent enough to do that, which is a bit arrogant if you ask me. Or the second one is that they've just never even asked themselves that question, and that's probably the more likely one, and also the more horrifying one, which is they haven't even considered why or if they should be doing these things. But yeah, so this psychiatrist, the most recent one, like we were talking, I'm trying to get like some personal things out of her in a nice way. And she also agreed with me, absolutely, that me coming to see her wasn't appropriate. Like, I didn't need her help, and as I'd said to the doctor to begin with, and then to the psychiatrist, we both absolutely agreed on that. But then she still wanted to see me for what had been prescribed, I guess, as 3 or 4 sessions. But this is because, as I found out on the next session or the one after, she says to me, well, I'm not supposed to like my patients. And see, it's like, when I say the and thing, but I know I'm going to take a sip of something, it's because, again, it's that drifting between my brain and my body. Like, I'm just thinking, because I'm making a video, I have to talk. And it would be the same as if I was with any other human being. I would have to feel like I have to supply a personality, a conversation. Getting deep on you there. So yes, I will try and end this on this one now. There will probably have to be a part 2, because there'll be so much more I wish to say. So I wanted to be an actor. That was one of the first things I ever wanted to be as a child, just because I just liked the, I guess I just liked the thought of it, really. I loved the, playing a role, I guess. I really couldn't actually tell you. I suppose it was too long ago. I'd have to think about it. But then I would always just get, like, stage fright or, like, performance anxiety so badly, to the point where, like, anytime I would be acting in something, like, it would be overacted. At least this is my perception. I don't know, some people could tell you anything I'd ever acted in was, like, the greatest role ever. 5 out of 5 stars, says the Times. But to me, it was just, like, such an uncomfortable thing to actually follow through with. And it took me a long time to kind of come to the realization that, in fact, they do potentially link, and I've only really discovered the connection later on in life. But the greatest role that I ever played was myself. Essentially, to be like the friend that people know me as, the family member that people know me as, the person who loves them, the person that they love. That was all something that was constructed for the benefits of myself, certainly originally, just so I could be around other people, but for the benefit of the outside world. The greatest role I've ever played was myself. I suppose still is, and I would like to say that I'm always trying to, like, meld the two, but that isn't necessarily the case. Like, I don't know if they ever could be melded together, because I guess I can't have the extraordinary, and I don't mean the extraordinary, wonderful, I literally mean the extraordinary personality that I do have, that so many other people have relied on. And I don't see that in any manner of making myself sound like I have exceptional worth or anything, but I will just confirm to you, so many people have relied on me, just in ways that I know they've even expressed that they can't rely on other people. I would just like to say, and again, not bragging about myself or anything, but I have had a friend, one who had helped get kick drugs, helped her when she was about to become homeless, or all these other things, turned around and said to me, like, I would be honored if you were my son. And just to, again, to put it into perspective, it's like how many of your friends, people that like your own age, younger than you are, or whatever it is, how many of them have actually said that to you? They've said they've loved you. They said, oh, I'd love it if you're my sister. You'd love it if that. How many people have said to you, like, I would be honored if you were my son? And this is somebody who was younger than me as well. But she was just talking about if she had thought that she had raised somebody like myself who did the things that I did, at least for her. I won't say about anybody else. Like, she would be honored to say that that was a human being that she had brought into this world. That's the personality that I have brought into this world effectively. And it's not me. I can't ever essentially take credit to it. Because it is, as I say, it is something that's held up. And it's not that I'm too different underneath. But it's just I have to do like a lot of, it's not work for me. It used to be work at one point. But I have to do a lot of refining of myself. And I have to have a lot of time by myself to be able to have that personality. And we aren't too different from one another. But I mean, I suppose I really don't know how to end with that one. Because I'm just thinking of something else now. It's like, because I suppose we are different at the same point. Like, I know when it's friendships, it's one thing. When it's relationships, it's something very different. Not all the time. Like, I mean, the only real relationship that I've ever had, and I probably will actually save this for another video now, just on the specific love and relationship side of things, not just the condition and the inside and outside world colliding. That they noted like I had walls up, and it wasn't walls as in you couldn't get to know me, but it was walls as if like they almost felt like there was nothing real in me. Everything, like the emotions were all real, the emotions that I felt, the emotions that they felt, but I think it was like I was, as they've even said, like I'm lovely. Like, I think it was because I was too nice, and then obviously they had their own fucking issues to deal with and still do, but I think it was the incomprehensible state of myself, and I suppose somebody legitimately considering in their own life being with this person for the rest of their life. They needed to know that, as I say, me with my friends, it's I do what I need to do with my friends, and then I go back and I have my alone time as much as I need. But whereas if this was to be somebody who I had to wake up with every day, as much as I may have wanted that, they may have wanted that, there were still internal things there, because I would not have that alone time. We would have to break through that barrier. And just give you a taste of what will be either in the next Schizoid-Schizotypal video or the next one, would just be the way that I used to do my relationships, if you will, would be, they would tend to be like straight guys. Oh, I'm gay, by the way. We tend to be straight guys, only for the fact that with them, if we like how close we would be getting and how close we would get. Oh, I'm not wearing my rings. I would have shown you one that a straight guy bought for me on Valentine's Day. We exchanged rings together. I don't know how well you can see it. It's got Roman numerals on it. And I always keep, yeah, you will probably tell, I always keep the number that's on my knuckle on the bone as like where the dial would be if it were a clock of the amount of people that I've actually been in love with in my life, like felt emotion toward. But yeah, so I would always like, I think the reason I would always go for guys like that is because should, after however long, we finally do something together, like physically, I would have that safety in the back of my mind, knowing that even if like they regretted it and like they're like, oh, I'm not gay, the simple fact is they obviously had felt close enough to me and had felt a strong enough emotional connection to me for us to proceed into a physical side of the relationship, even if it was only for a night. And that's something that they could never take away from me, nor throw away with words by saying, oh, it was nothing, it wasn't anything, it was this, it was that. Because their actions would speak louder than their words, which I suppose is what I try and do with my own life. Anyway, as I say, I could go on about this for hours, but I'm not going to. I probably will do this in parts and chunks. God bless. God love you all, friends. Be good to each other. And do the best you can in everything for everyone. You know what it is? It's about being the perfect arbiter. You're not emotionally invested in anything or anyone, but you can still care enough to truly do what's best for them. And thus, I pray that there's a nice little seat on Jesus' judgment council for me. Because I did always say, originally in life, like, if of course I was ever granted the honor of being there, I would, anytime anybody that I ever knew in real life ever came before me, I would always abdicate my judgment on them simply for the fact that there were extenuating circumstances and I knew them in a different time when we all didn't know quite as many things about the world. The only difference would be if it was somebody who I could literally take by the hand and walk toward my Lord and say, my Lord, this is the best of us. This is somebody who I'm honored to bring before you. However, I definitely think the more recent trials and tribulations in my life have led me to knowing that if I'm going to be on that council, it's not for me to passively let people that I've known in real life go without my judgment. It's the complete opposite. I need to do the hard thing. I need to be able to say the things that I know about these people and feel for them and understand them as best I can, understand why they did certain things and then why they didn't do certain other things. And likewise, I'm sure the Lord, knowing my soul, I'm going to get a much more thorough evaluation before I ever get placed on such an honourable position. That's definitely one thing that I've come to realise about why I am the way that I am as well. I just wanted to tack that onto the end here. Finally got cigarettes again.